What is denied by everyone but actually 100% real? Story 1, being addicted to your cell phone. I have a few friends who use their phones for work, so I understand it partly, but their face is staring at that screen constantly throughout the whole day, every single day. We're in some group texts, and they not only respond within seconds to everything, but they're posting all the time. Story 2. Children don't bounce back quickly after a traumatic event, even if we like to think they do, because they continue to function. Their brain just isn't yet equipped to deal with trauma, so handling the memory is delayed. That's how we get messed up adults who need therapy. Story 3. I'm a teacher, and they like to reiterate that we aren't in it for the money, but are in it for the kids. I guess that's true in crappy paying areas, but where I live, I'm there to be a good teacher, for a sizable salary. Without the money, I have zero desire to teach kids. Story 4. One example could be the idea that everyone has their own unique perspective on reality, even if they don't always acknowledge it. Everyone experiences and interprets the world differently, but this is a true and personal reality for each person. Story 5. The idea that we only use a small percentage of our brain, often cited as 10%, is a myth. Modern neuroscience has shown that we use virtually every part of our brain, and most of the brain is active almost all the time. Different tasks and activities involve different areas of the brain, and even when we're at rest, the brain is still working to support basic functions like breathing, regulating body temperature, and maintaining our heartbeat. Story 6. Kamala Harris is only popular because she opposes Trump. People from both sides hated her as VP for an easy of many examples because of her marijuana position and locking people up for it, then openly loving it when she was nominated to become Joe Biden's VP pick. She's flippant and not authentic. She just happens to be the lesser of two evils. Simple as that, let's not pretend it's more than that. Edit, spelling. Story 7. There is a legit chance that COVID escaped a Chinese lab, possibly even created there. The idea became politicized when Trump was desperate to scapegoat anyone for the troubles of the day, and the mainstream media wouldn't have it. For political reasons, it became anti-scientific to even suggest this theory had any merit. 4 years later, after everyone has cooled off, and now the New York Times has posted that the U.S. Energy Department thinks lab leak theory is exactly what happened. I don't have a strong opinion on its origin because it all sounds plausible. Nobody knows for sure. Definitely was denied by everyone, but it could have been real. Story 8. That people can change and learn from their mistakes. Everyone I know loves to completely eschew anyone and hold grudges for forever over who a person is, when really it was just something someone did. We're human. We make mistakes. If someone says, I'm not that person anymore, and their actions seem to confirm it, might be time to let it go. Story 9. People seriously underestimate their ability to do things they consider bad or wrong. No one is above an immoral act. You're not above cheating, as an example, and thinking you are makes you worse at recognizing and avoiding situations that might lead to that. Additionally, people are really good at justifying themselves when they do something they have previously derided as amoral or wrong. We judge others on their actions, we judge ourselves on our intent. Story 10. That our global banking system is a debt-based system backed by nothing of tangible hard value, and the entire monetary system is set to collapse on a global scale in the near future, not by accident, but by design. For us here in the U.S., our dollar was backed by gold. Then oil, now it is literally backed by nothing other than the faltering and highly discretionary inflationary United States credit. Story 11. What's keeping people from understanding each other is our egos. Everybody thinks what they know is the correct one, the only truth. People aren't really stupid, just too arrogant and full of ourselves. We always think we know better than others. But we forget that our realities and truths are just our side of the story. There can be many sides of stories. Just because ours is different from others doesn't mean they are wrong. Most of the time, two or more facts, truths, can coexist. But not everyone is ready to accept that. Which is actually funny because we are in a world now where people push for equality, freedom, and non-discrimination, but we can't just seem to be comfortable with people who have different preferences and views as ours. We easily invalidate other people simply because they say things we do not agree. Most can't even keep a respectful and healthy discourse while expressing their ideas, as if resorting to ad hominems will make their points more right than the other. We fail to see that we can only talk about the things we know and understand. Without listening and willingness to understand what others have to say, we will never learn and grow. We will never find the best solution to issues and disputes. People will never be able to find a middle ground unless we learn how to humble ourselves and think, I could be wrong, and she could be right. Or, oh yeah, that's interesting. I didn't see it that way, but it makes sense. We lean solely in our own understanding and not hear what others have to say, just to confirm our own biases. We will never find peace and harmony in what we are doing right now. Instead of using social media and globalization as a way of building unity among people and nations, here we are creating a never-ending divide among sexes, genders, races, political or religious views, as if one is superior than the other, when the very truth is no one is. We call ourselves Homo sapiens, the wise man, but as I see it, there's nothing wise about what we are doing right now. We are our own tragic demise, and we are all too arrogant to admit it. Story 12. Every single person around you has their own rich life experiences that has defined their point of view. To them, you're the side character in their story, the person they pass on the road. Every single one. Every person out of the multitude you interact with on any given day has a life, a web of relationships, a story that is just as intricate as your own. Story 13. Not everyone denies this, but the CIA had quietly admitted that psychic functioning is real. To quote the paper, when held to the same standards as any other field of science, it is concluded that psychic functioning has been well established. The effect observed what would be called a small to medium effect, but it is far beyond what is expected by chance. Story 14. Human beings are by and large extremely irrational. While there's always range, of course, there is almost nothing objective or rational about anything we do. We just trick ourselves into believing it is. Somehow we also oddly juxtapose rationality with being emotional, when feeling and understanding emotions is what A, makes us human, and B, almost completely guides all our behavior. Basically, no one wants to believe this. It's easier not to. Also, biases. Absolutely everybody has many of them, especially those claiming they have none. That's the I have no bias bias. Story 15. That there is no such thing as an evil person. All people are complex and come from various experiences that, when combined with genetics, medical, and psychiatric issues, plus all of the little facets of a life lived, make a human a unique person. Even people who do the most horrendous things are human. Saying a human is evil is a way of getting out of thinking about their complexity and humanity. To be clear, some people do deeply fucked up things we'll never understand, but at one point they were infants like the rest of us. Story 16. There is life living in the clouds, the very air we breathe, the water we swim in or drink, in our food, on every surface, inside our bodies, and on our skin. We may from time to time acknowledge this, but generally, everyone actively suppresses the realization, actively denying it, even when they have a broad understanding that it is true. Even hypochondriacs that are hyper-aware of this realization only focus on the surfaces they touch and actively deny that there is no escaping it on a more general level. If you're reading this and nodding along without freaking out, you're actively denying it with me. If you're shaking your head no, you are denying its existence itself. I believe it is not something to worry about really, other than keeping generally clean, but not unusually so. Don't think about it so little that you damage yourself, and likewise, don't think about it so much that you damage yourself. As my dad always said, don't think about your food. Still cook it thoroughly, though. It applies to so many things. I hope this doesn't cause an existential crisis for anyone, but it is the best answer to this question. Every other answer others have given, from death to judgment to discrimination and so on, are not denied by everyone. The only thing we all hold hands together and consistently deny as a whole on a daily basis as one is life itself. In this we have absolute unity. Story 17. The mentality that I can do whatever I want, so as long as I'm not hurting anyone. It doesn't clarify your intention of what you want to do. It is too broad, and I think any action a person does influences and affects others despite what one may think. Story 18. That health matters. People deny the right balance between money and health. They put money first and last, completely destroying their health in the process. Regardless of how much you make, your liver doesn't know that. Your stomach, gallbladder, colon, etc. Your kidneys still have a very important job to do 24/7. People just work their boring 9, 5 and eat whatever they want until it catches up with them. Drink themselves to death. Eating loads of sugar and junk food, gaining weight. It's insane how normalized it is. Only the educated ones on nutrition will live long, healthy lives. Best of luck. Story 19. Wow, I'm like really tripping out right now. Sometimes I would stare in the mirror and zone out and be like, who the hell is this I'm looking at? Like realizing what you may look to someone else, or that feeling of what you're looking at not being real. IDK, it's just a crazy, weird feeling. Story 20. The working class is being exploited by the owner class, creating the largest wealth gap in human history. There's enough food production to feed everyone on the planet, but food producers and distributors purposefully create false shortages and destroy surplus in order to artificially raise prices. The global north is exploiting the global south for resources and installing dictator-style governments to enslave millions of people, some children, to continue commodity production to satiate the fabricated wants of rich populations. Climate change and pollution is largely caused by large corporations trying to remain largely profitable because they know that it will not affect them, the rich and elite, to the same degree as it will affect poor and middle-class people. The burdens of global climate change are pushed onto working-class people because it is more monetarily beneficial to the elite that are constantly exploiting everyone's labor to create profit by stealing the money your labor produces. Story 21. The horrors we put animals through currently is beyond anything most people imagine and completely and easily avoidable. There is no such thing as animal-friendly milk or wool in stores. Does not exist, even in the most cuddly biofarm you can imagine. At some point in that process, cuddly cute animals are hurt horribly. If you truly enter the discussion open-minded and willing to be told the truth, and have ever said you love animals, you'd flip to veganism instantly. Instead, 99% of people lie to themselves and others about soy, or B12, or protein, or that animals don't notice, or they know a farm that has it figured out, or that vegetarianism is good enough, appeals to nature, happens in the wild too, or we are meant to eat meat. Plants feel pain, or that fishing doesn't pollute the oceans, or fish don't feel, or that veganism is privilege. All of these are easily debunked, but there are few things people will accept poor arguments on more than animal cruelty. Flipping the switch leads to something they call dystopia, the realization that most of the world engages in horrifying behavior and seems perfectly okay with that, and lying about it. Telling anyone about this will lead to being called extreme or mocked. Story 22. People aren't actually rational by nature, but they can act in a rational fashion occasionally. If you watch the brain activity of people, the oldest and deepest parts of their brains, which are not implicated in sapience, start firing seconds before they start lighting up the relatively newer parts of the brain, the forebrain, and result in the person saying, "I have made a decision." Story 23. That a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog games turn out badly because Sega of Japan still has a grudge against him from the 90s. And they deliberately put out glitchy, mediocre games because they don't want them to sell. This is why Sega executives pushed out Sonic 066 months early. This is why they included the Werehog in Sonic Unleashed. This is why just everything about Sonic boomed. This is why Sonic Forces was so incredibly, painfully mediocre. This is why Sonic Dream Team was exclusive to iOS. Hell, look at Sonic Mania compared to Sonic the Hedgehog 4. Sonic Mania was fantastic. Because it wasn't produced by Sega. Sega certainly tried to kneecap it by forcing them to use levels from older games, but it still turned out amazing because it was made by people who didn't hate the franchise they were working on. Story 24, how you portray yourself in the public and how you are in real life are two different people in the same body. How many people do you know who constantly post feel-good quotes on social media about being kind to each other and dispelling the negative energy, but are always getting into fights with fast food workers and retail employees? Way too many LOL. Story 25. A group of insanely wealthy, likely psychopathic individuals who have enough wealth, influence, and power to gently steer the majority of the planet's autopilot people mindlessly navigating life are absolutely taking advantage of the vast majority, and we're totally unaware on a whole. Some call this tiny group Illuminati. I think it's fairly obvious in a way that some unimaginably wealthy people feel it's their right to lord over us, when in fact they're actually no different to the rest of us. If we as a people noticed fully the depth, we'd kick a big style. Story 26. We have a few centuries left as a globally connected technologic civilization. People are not fully grasping the consequences of the Earth rising another 6C12F, which it's on track to do, and it's too late for us to prevent this as we're currently in a feedback loop of warming. Even if all humans vanish Thanos style, the warming will continue. Entire regions will become uninhabitable. Severe weather will make air travel unreasonable, and the technology to support it will slowly fall out of use. Populations will become isolated. It won't be the end of humanity, but it will be the end of our technologic society. Story 27. On the caveat that it's difficult to get a 100% universal opinion. In intellectual pursuits, talent only exists as some abstract notion, but everyone who ever achieved anything will claim it was through work and effort and get very angry if you bring up talent. I've actually seen a father get very, very angry at people praising his 5-year-old son for his speed cubing ability. I can understand why he undoubtedly sank a lot of time and effort into teaching him algorithms, but I doubt just any 5-year-old has the discipline or knack for it. Heck, there are adults who struggle at learning algorithms. Story 28. So, go into a cooking subreddit. They're an outright flat earther/moon landing hoax denial that salt, sodium, is a major contributing factor to heart disease, and that heart disease is the world's #1 leading cause of death. Pretty much every major World Health Organization, AMA, WHO, AHA, etc., agrees that for the most part we're consuming too much sodium and we should dial it back. Average diet consumes around 3,400 mg/day. Maximum should be no more than 2,300 mg/day, with the ideal amount being around 1,500 milligrams per day. The average human only need approx. 500 mg/day, and the kidneys are great at retaining and moderating sodium levels over time, but they can only do so much. For comparison, a McDonald's cheeseburger has 720 milligrams. A single Chipotle dish can have over 2,500 milligrams. In a modern diet, it's genuinely a challenge to consume less than 500 milligrams per day without being calorie deficient, given how utterly prolific salt is in nearly every dish. They will quote single lines from research studies that dispute this, which are out of context and don't include the "in general, we agree with the major organizations for the time being, but it warrants more investigation" sections. They'll give anecdotal stories where their cardiologist said to consumer 3x the normal intake of salt or they'd die. So what? That's advice for you, not for the general public. Salt is insidious. It blends into food so well, and we become accustomed to the taste of it over time. So much that we vote with our wallets if something isn't salty enough. Negative feedback loop. And my suggestion, stop cooking with so much salt, let the food speak for itself, and put a salt shaker out on the table. It's probably already there. If someone wants to taste salt, they can add it themselves. And the butcher knives come out as they look to eviscerate you for even mentioning taking away their precious sis's salt. Like an addict. Story 29. Most people's emotions are very transparent and can be easily read if you're paying attention. Not saying you will know why they are feeling this way, but I find most people get startled and/or defensive by something as simple as, "You look a little stressed," while displaying all physical signs of being stressed. But I understand why people don't like the idea of their inner world being easily seen. Story 30. It's time to buy a bigger gas guzzler and some new clothes that I'll never wear. Many of us deny the significant impact that we as individuals have on the planet. Also, the economic experts that we elect deny the unsustainable nature of continuous economic growth, but all the while planning for it. Resource depletion and environmental consequences are real, and a child born in 2100 will marvel at how out of touch the cashed-up component of the human race was in 2024. Story 31. Everyone, maybe trolls and hater online, that most people use cognitive biases, that is, cognitive dissonance, unless they are aware of them and make corrections. Some people online like to throw around accusations of cognitive biases to a group or political party that they don't like. Cognitive biases are mental shortcuts to think quickly and describe the way people generally think. The online troll doesn't even understand what the bias means, or they would not accuse a group of doing it.